Hello. Cathar Love 82. Genocide of the Cathars by the Church. Genocide. I don't use that word lightly. But when it came to the Church eliminating the Cathars, it certainly was genocide. Because from the time Pope Innocent III started the Inquisition, or the Albigensian Crusade to start with, which was followed later by the Inquisition, when the Crusade, which lasted 20 years, failed to wipe out the Cathars. He then brought in the Inquisition, and then later he was followed by Pope Honorius III, and later followed by Pope Gregory IX, who also authorized the Inquisition to use torture, and so that wiped out the Cathars, eradicated them, and so they didn't leave any monuments or churches because they weren't into things like that. They were more into nature. They worshipped in houses, in the fields and caves and the forest. But there's another group at the same time that were also persecuted by the Church, and they also literally had a genocide against them, and they were the Waldensians. And they estimate with the Cathars, the Church wiped out between 1 and 2 million Cathars. One can argue over the numbers. With the Waldensians, it was worse. They actually probably definitely closer to 2 million. And although it was quite horrific what they did to the Cathars, burning them sometimes in groups of 200 and 400, singly, whatever, whoever they could get their hands on. Even going to the graveyard, and if someone said my uncle was a Cathar, they would exhume the corpse and then burn the corpse. So because the only good Cathar was a burnt Cathar. But with the Waldensians, they, whatever you can imagine, whatever torment you can imagine, the Church inflicted upon the Waldensians. Men, women and child. I mean, to go into what they did is absolutely horrific. And it's a strange thing, but the Cathars, the Waldensians, and the Catholics were all Christian religions. With the Cathars, we hopefully got rid of the religion and we're sticking to philosophy and ethics now, and becoming a universal belief system. But at that time, because we just evolve and everything keeps evolving, but these were Christian religions, and so there was hardly love your neighbour. In fact, it was kill your neighbour, if anything. I don't know what it is about human nature, but people of the same religion want to eliminate the heretics, the infidels, the ones who don't believe as they believe. But they're far worse. People are far worse to their own than they are to a stranger. In the American Civil War, I mean, I don't know if all the worst wars that the Americans have died in, I don't know if their numbers have still totaled the amount of people killed, one American killing another during the American Civil War. And that goes on and on. With the we have with Islam, I mean, the slaughter that's going on today, there's quite horrific acts, and it's but a religion against their own people, their own religion. there's some dark humour. So even with all this gore and mayhem and slaughter and killing and butchery, people still manage to laugh. I heard one story, and it's in Tunisia, and there's been enough atrocities over there. They say over 100,000 people have been killed by the fundamentalists. These fundamentalists, doesn't matter whether they're Christian, they're Judaic, or they're Muslim, they're all the same. They're just tarred with a slightly different brush, and you can't argue with them. But this fundamentalists in Tunisia, they'd sometimes just stop a car or a bus, and they slaughter everybody, just kill them all. Anyway, this they called it the roadblock, and there was this roadblock, and here were these fundamentalists, and they captured the bus. While one person's on guard, this one goes up and he says to the passenger, "What's your name?" "Omar." Boom! Shoots him. He said, "What's your name?" "Muhammad." Cuts his throat. And he sees a woman there. He said, "What's your name?" He goes, "Malika." "Okay," he said, "okay. My mother's name was Malika." He said, "I'll spare you." But then he goes through the bus, literally killing and butchering each person, shooting them or cutting their throats, until he comes to one last person, and it's a big solid guy, and he's there, and he's got a beard, and the terrorist says to him, "And what's your name?" And he goes, "Malika." Okay, so even when things are dark and dismal, people still can laugh. And if we don't laugh, everything's gone. But going back to genocide, if we have the Cathars, the Waldensians, but if we want to look at the large overall picture, we have people estimating that the church, up until the 19th century, going from virtually the first millennium until the 19th century, they have butchered, burnt, tortured to death, whatever. Now, we have figures of 50 million up to 65 million. Now, obviously, there's countless numbers. We'll never know who they are, because they're individuals, they're gone, there was no records taken of them, and if they're lost. But we've got historians, acclaimed historians like Lecky, and he said that there's no organisation in the world that has, well, it's the bloodiest organisation that's ever existed, is the Catholic Church. And another one said that if we want to take the numbers and divide it up by the number of years until the end of the Inquisition, we're looking at an average of 40,000 people that they killed every year. This is, the mind boggles. It's really hard to take in. And most of these people didn't enjoy a very pleasant death. But why? It's about one thing and one thing alone. And that one thing is the opposite to everything the Cathars are about and what the Cathars stand for. And not just the Cathar, other people, but certainly the Cathars. The Cathars were about love, amor in Latin, A-M-O-R. The church was about power, and the epitome of power since the days of Rome was Rome, and in Latin that's R-O-M-A, and amor and Roma are the opposites. One spelt the opposite to the other. One was all about love, and one is all about power. And the Catholic Church, at the time of Pope Innocent III, was probably at its zenith. as far as power is concerned. And suddenly, here's this heretical group, these Cathars, and Pope Innocent III said 80% of his priests and bishops are either Cathars or Cathar sympathisers. Well, if we put ourselves in Pope Innocent's shoes, he is supposedly the most powerful man in the world, throned and dethroned kings and emperors. And here's his organisation, the most powerful organisation in the world, imploding in on itself. And it's all because of these damn Cathars, these heretics. So he really had to do something about it. So his first thing was he implemented the Albigensian Crusade, which made it, there wasn't 9 crusades altogether, there was 10. And it was Christian against Christian on European soil. It was 20 years altogether, that period. But it failed. They wiped out a lot of Cathars and Cathar sympathisers, but the Cathars went underground and probably became stronger. But when Innocent III, his next step was to introduce the Inquisition, and the following 2 popes just entrenched it and brought in torture. And it was the Inquisition that literally wiped out the Cathars, because one just couldn't stand against the Inquisition, their methods, their way of doing it. And at that time, the Jews, because Pope Innocent had the Fourth Lateran Council, and one of the things on the council was about the Jews, and one of the things that the Jews had to do at that time was wear some article on their clothing to denote that they were a Jew. But they certainly weren't massacred, but they were Jewish. But they certainly weren't massacred later in the Spanish Inquisition. Things took a turn for the worse. But the Jews were given a hard time, but they weren't massacred like Christian to Christian, like the church did to the Cathars or the Waldensians. I honestly don't know. Is the world ever going to change? I don't think it. I don't think it can. I think if you have good, it's like yin and yang. If you have goodness here, you're going to have evil over here. If you have night, you're going to have day. If you're going to have health, you're going to have sickness. If you're going to be born, you're going to die. We're a world of opposites. So the Chinese say yin and yang, but yin and yang aren't static things. Yin and yang, if there's more yang, there's less yin. If there's more yin, there's less yang. And so I don't think evil and nastiness can be eradicated. But what we can do is we can increase the goodness and lessen the amount of nastiness and evil that is going on. And they say charity starts at home. Well, decency, goodness, not harming another person, trying to be loving to your neighbour, to other people, understanding, being tolerant, respecting everybody, that starts with one person. That's me and you. If we can do that, that's all we really have to do. Because by doing that, you become an example to others. But the big thing is, you are not harming and hurting other people. And we're trying to fight. Some people want justice and they want love and all these things, but it has to start somewhere, and where it starts is with you and me in understanding ourselves, getting to like ourselves, and I think that history is so important, because it's through history we don't forget what's happened to Cathars, what's happened to the Waldensians. And this is important because these were groups of people the Waldensians didn't harm anybody. You know, they were a group who they just wanted to be, primitive Christianity. They tried to model themselves on the early teachings of Christ, which the Cathars did, although they did it in different ways. And these people weren't harming anybody, and suddenly here's the church, and the church could not abide losing power to anybody, and the church was protecting itself, and in order to protect itself, it's prepared to butcher and commit genocide if it's necessary. So that has changed, and we have a new pope at the present, and he seems to be doing what he can to make changes, and so we can be thankful for that. But ultimately, what other people do is their responsibility. What you and I do is our responsibility. Bye for now.